Well, we have listened to some of the issues concerning environment, multiculturalism, and rise of the IS. I don't know whether I can speak on behalf of all emerging powers. It's too big a task. But I'll come back to the introduction which was given. What has happened since 89, in 25 years, when the whole thesis of end of history was pronounced, and what we have really seen from India, at least that I can cover a little bit. Now we all know today that the euphoria created by the end of history was very short-lived. In fact, even, I was in Budapest at that point of time in 91, 92, 93. And I clearly remember most of the people there, they were hoping very soon, it means within next 2 or 3 years, they'll become member of the EU. They were quite convinced at that point of time. But it took almost 15 years for the first group of countries from Central and Eastern Europe to become member of the EU. Some became later, some are still waiting. And we also realized later on that this whole change was also not really very peaceful as it was pronounced. What happened in Yugoslavia? What happened later on in some of the CIS countries, in Tajikistan and other places? And what is happening now in Ukraine? The Cold War was ended, but NATO still survived and continue to find its new role. Now, if I look this whole change in the last 25 years, now the bipolar world during the Cold War was a terrible word. But for many third world countries, it was relatively simple word to operate. They just had to decide which side suits better. Now, countries like India tried to be innovative through non-aligned movement. It gave them at least some independence, some maneuverability within those conditions. Now, for a few years during the unipolar world, it was, again, not very difficult world. Either you are with the US or you are against the US. And if you are against the US, you know what is in store for you. Now, with the emergence, or rather, in fact, if one is looking in the historical context, re-emergence of some of the new powers of these BRIC countries, and with the relative decline of the West, I think the global scenario has become much more complicated. It's still not a multipolar world. Some scholars call it multiplex world. Like in a multiplex cinema, you have all kind of movies going on. There's an action movie, there's a horror movie, there's a family drama, there's a love story. So you can choose wherever you want to go. Or you can choose. Today you can see a horror movie, tomorrow you can join family drama. But clearly, whatever is happening, the monopoly over global power relations has been challenged by these BRIC countries and many more those who are joining this group of countries. Now, emergence of some of these countries are clearly result of faster economic growth in countries like China and India. One also has to see this in historical context. Now, if I look at India, between 1850 and 1950, there was almost stagnation for 100 years. And then, from 1950 till 1980, you had roughly about 3.5% growth. And then in the 80s, you had about 5.5% growth. And then, since then, there will be ups and downs, but you have about 7% plus growth. Now, this kind of growth was not seen by generations. So obviously this has made serious impact internally as well as emergence of these countries at the global scale. But opening of these countries, as a result of the opening of these countries, they have also become part of the global networks. Networks of trade, investment, technology. So clearly, the antagonism to the West has weakened because to a significant extent, these emerging countries also have a stake now in Western prosperity. When growth rates decline in Europe and in US, it affects them negatively. So they are also trying to see what kind of really stable system can emerge. But it seems to me, the way things are happening today, particularly in this continent, that the end of history was taken more seriously by Europe compared to other parts. I think this is clearly evident the way they are handling Ukrainian crisis. Now, what is happening today between Europe and Ukraine is a standard textbook case of geopolitics. And geopolitics as a discipline originated in Europe. So Europeans should have easily anticipated Russian response. But today, there's no credible plan to help Ukraine, which has already lost Crimea. Eastern provinces are out of control. Thousands of people have died. Because Europe cannot offer EU membership, cannot offer even NATO membership in any foreseeable future. And when one is reading, Chancellor Merkel asserted that President Putin is living in a different world. Of course, he lives in a very different world. In fact, many outside Europe actually believe that Europe is living in a different world. The normative power of Europe has clearly, it has its limits. Now, without a credible, independent military power, I think it's going to be difficult for Europe to influence any major hotspots. Now, as a result of what is happening, one of your strategic partner has become what is being called now strategic problem. And in fact, for so long, in our parts of the world, we always thought that regional integration, because Europe was kind of a very successful model of regional integration, a pioneering in regional integration. So regional integration is always kind of good. And Europe also promoted regional integration, regional cooperation all over the world. But what one is seeing now today in Ukraine, this is also a kind of result of competitive regional integration projects of Europe as well as of Russia. So sometime now one has to wonder that whether regional integration may always lead to win-win gain, which we always thought in the developing world. Now, end of history thesis talked about spread of democracy, free market. Now, democracy might not have spread all around. But still, more and more countries are adopted free market economic systems. You can look from China to Vietnam to India to countries in Africa and Latin America. More and more governments are opening up their economies. It means there was some merit even in the end of history thesis that actually all countries are looking. Of course, there'll be different kind of market economies all over the world, but they are moving more towards market economies. In fact, many of these BRIC countries or many other developing countries, they have adopted rather aggressive globalization now. In Western countries today are rather more cautious about globalization than many of these emerging powers. So it's a more interdependent world today. It's a different world today. Although to some extent, the BRICS are seen as an anti-Western group. To some extent they are. But every member of the BRICS country also want to have good relations with the West, particularly with the US. So this is the kind of world in which we are living. So even if on PPP basis, on purchasing power parity basis, recent IMF figures shows that China might have overtaken US as #1 economy of the world. Still, I think on exchange rate basis, Chinese economy is still much smaller than the US, and it's going to take some time for them to catch up, because in international transactions, exchange rates do matter. And even if after 20 years, 30 years, when countries like China and India become leading global economies, the per capita incomes in these economies will still remain much, much lower than the Western world. So what we have now in this new complicated world, we have entry of non-state actors. We also have now entry of non-traditional donors. All of them are also becoming reasonably significant donors to other developing countries. So that also would change scenario in the years to come. There is also entry of different global institutions like the BRICS New Development Bank or the Chinese Infrastructural Bank. But what one can see even today, even if some of these countries have joined some of those groupings, they have becoming more significant, but still one can see that most small, poor developing countries, they are still excluded from most of the governing structures. Thank you.